Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvashavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Is my voice loud enough? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I could not hear anybody chanting at all. So next time maybe we can chant more full-throatedly with gusto. Thank you, Ganesh. Swami Advayatmananda invited me to speak on Saturday morning. We've known each other since 1981, so who knows what stories will be told. Because we were canceling the Saturday morning class to go there, I was thinking that if I could ask you to have that extra strong cup of tea Saturday evening, we could transform the Saturday Satsang into another class. Because even though this text seems pretty straightforward and simple, it's very deep. And I have prepared about 35 hours of talk. So we'll have to see how we can cut things down a bit. And so we won't have, the only class we'll be missing is Saturday morning meditation. You know, I've said for a long time, it doesn't feel like a puja Swami ashram without some construction going on. When I stayed here for about 4 years in the late 80s, and we were doing the construction here, and the backhoes and the heavy machinery always would come rumbling by and shake our cottages. So whenever I smell diesel exhaust, I think of India. Whenever I hear a peacock, I think of the Anakati ashram near Coimbatore. And whenever I hear construction, I know, I must be at a Advayatmananda ashram. And today was a Saraswati Puja. We would celebrate here, when I was studying here, and of course, many of you must have done this, made an altar out of your books. And since there are initially about 60 people here, there was a big altar of books. And when we did it in Anakati, at the Gurukulam there, we also put our laptops there. And we'd keep a keen eye on the priest, and pray that he did become too enthusiastic with the Abhishek, because we didn't want him to soak our laptops and short-circuit them. But he would give, Puja Swamiji, we practiced Maunam that day, and he gave us the mantra, Aing Saraswatyai Namaha, or Aim Shring Shring Saraswatyai Namaha. And so we would be chanting it, because you're not supposed to study on Saraswati Puja Day. So the timing worked out well, because we're not really studying, we're just storytelling this evening. I'd like to just show you this handout here. Review this a bit. So you'll see, I have the numbers, the pages numbered. And we have on page 2 and 3, we have the Shanti Patas. And then on page 4 and 5, we have the introductory shlokas. And then follow the 12 shlokas of the stotra itself. And then starting on page 12, there's a notes section. And this is really my notes as I prepare for the classes. Things come to me, or I look things up and I say, this would be nice to share, this would be nice to share. If you notice, it's pretty heavily front-loaded. Many texts, the first shloka, first sutra, first chapter are the seed teaching. So Sri Krishna did this in the second chapter of the Gita. The entire teaching of the Gita is in the second chapter. And everything after that is an elaboration of that. And I found that here. So we'll be lingering on the first shloka for some time. And if you notice, there are a lot of notes. We may not get to all the notes. We'll see how time progresses. But what I'll try to do is to reference the page numbers as I go along, just so you can keep up with where we are. when I say the phrase, the words, Ramaha Ramau Ramaha, who here knows what I'm referring to? Don't be shy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, some of us, good. That's one of the first things you learn when you study Sanskrit. So please don't be flustered by the Sanskrit that you'll hear. I'm usually pretty good at translating in real time, but maybe I will stop with the translations after I've used the terms a dozen times. It's a beautiful language, and just if you hear it, and you don't understand it, just relax. Let it this beautiful Sanskrit in this California accent just wash over you. And the quotes are from various sources. There's some definitions and some quotes from the commentaries and from the Upanishads and the Gita and from a commentary on this text itself. And the reason I include these is that I find the teaching exquisitely expressed in these phrases from the original source. And when I was studying with Puja Swamiji, whenever he'd pull a quote, I'd always be running to Mahadevan, who's now Swami Siddhabodhananda, because he was a Sanskrit teacher here. And I always ask him, where did that come from? Or I'd look in the Jacob's Concordance or something. I'd always want to know what the source was and have the full text there. So I reckon that some of us here might have a similar jignasa, a similar curiosity. So that's one reason. And this text is a Nididhyasana grantha. It's a meditative text because it focuses on the nature of Tvam Padartha. So in the, let me say the Mahavakya, the first word is Tvam, or Tat Tvam Asi. Tat, you, Tvam, you, Asi are that. And when I was a freshly minted sannyasi, I went to a variety of sadhus that I admired and asked them, what advice do you have for someone like me? And one sannyasi said, focus on Tvam Padartha, the artha, the meaning of the word, of the pada Tvam in the Mahavakya Tvam, meaning, koham, who am I? Because if you don't intimately understand the nature of who you are, the teaching of Vedanta will always be abstract and third person. This is a very personal teaching. Please take everything I say very personally, because we're not here to learn about Vedanta. We're here to understand the nature of ourselves. And so I consider this this text and these quotes grist for the Nididhyasana mill. Do you know the phrase grist for the mill? You know, back in the day, the village would have at least in Europe, I don't know about India, each village would have a grain mill, and the villagers would bring their grain to the mill, and they'd give it to the miller. Anybody know someone named Miller? That's where that comes from. And the grain would be ground. And so what that means is that the grist are the grain, something that can be made use of. And just as the grain can be ground down in the grain mill, I feel that similarly these quotations can be grist for our contemplation. Through repeated churning in your buddhi, the meaning can be refined. And so this is this compilation of text, of quotations, and the text itself contains a lot of very beautiful seeds for meditation. And if nothing else, you could take it home as a compendium of wisdom and a souvenir of your day of enlightenment. I've never heard anyone teach this text. Whenever I teach here, I always like to take something a bit unusual. There's actually two names for it. Hasta Malika Stotra or Hasta Malakiyam. Hasta Malakiyam means Hasta Malika Virachita, that which was a text that was composed by Hasta Malika. And I know Swami Paramarthananda has taught this, and I know a couple other people within our Arsha Parampara, our lineage, have taught this. apparently was a favorite of Ramana Maharshi. He did a translation from the Sanskrit into the Tamil, and that's published, I believe. So just to set the context, Shankaracharya. Who here has never heard of Shankaracharya? A couple of people. Okay, good. So if you look on, I didn't note the page here. Under the notes, let me see, do I have that here? Yeah, on page 12. You'll see a very well-known shloka. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. And it says, I offer my reverential salutation to the lineage of teachers. Where did this teaching start? We don't know. We say it must have started with Bhagavan. It's a given in the creation. And so we say it begins with Sadashiva, with Ishvara himself. And there's a link of Guru Shishya, teacher student, Shishya student. And this middle link, Shankaracharya Madhyamam, in this parampara, in this lineage, the middle link is Shankaracharya. Shankaracharya did not invent Advaita Vedanta. He had teachers before him. He's commented on the Gaudapada Karika, which is a commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad. So he commented on a writing of his guru's guru. So there's obviously a lineage already there. But he's considered the middle link. And Asmadacharya Paryantam, the latest in the chain of teachers, is our very guru, Puja Swamiji. I salute that whole lineage. The time for Shankaracharya is disputed. Some say maybe 800, some say quite a bit earlier. But the oldest extant existent commentaries we have on the Prasthanatraya, the main texts of this Advaita Vedanta tradition, are from Shankaracharya. The Prasthanatraya are the three main texts we look for that contain this wisdom tradition. The Shruti, from the Vedas, meaning the Upanishads. Shankaracharya wrote a commentary on 10 of those. The Bhagavad Gita, so that's the Shruti Grantha. And then the Smriti Grantha is from the Itihasa, the Mahabharata. So in the middle of the Mahabharata is the Bhagavad Gita. And then the very scholarly text, the Nyaya Grantha, is the Brahma Sutra. And I'll be quoting from the Brahma Sutra in a couple of places. And so his is the oldest set of commentaries we have, and that's really a touchstone. Puja Swamiji was not particularly orthodox, but he was very traditional. If he was orthodox, he probably wouldn't give him this Shuklamukhi, this Shwetamukhi, this Caucasian fellow, or any of the women, actually, sannyasa. It's not particularly traditional. But he's very, it wasn't orthodox, but he was traditional in the sense that he went straight to the Bhasha. And so when we were studying here, when people had enough Sanskrit, he'd start reading straight from the commentary. And that's how, you must have heard the Gita home study. That was all when Puja Swamiji taught the Gita here. Our classroom was up in what used to be called Ganga. What is it called now? Dayalaya? Yeah, very beautiful. So where the Murti is where he was. And I was second row back just to the right. And so in the evenings, instead of satsang, he would teach the Bhagavad Gita, and he referencing the Shankara, the Bhasha, the commentary. Bhasha means commentary, the commentary of Shankaracharya. And then students here would transcribe it and edit the talks, and that was published as the Gita Home Study. And originally it was sent out chapter by chapter after they finished. Right? So many of us old-timers have blue binders, and they'd send out 3-hole punched versions of this, and you would get a new one every couple of months, and we'd put it in the 3-hole binder. It's a very beautiful program, but that's very authentic. They edited out a lot of the details of the Sanskrit, but if you read those 3,000 pages or something, it's quite authentic because it comes straight from the commentary of Shankaracharya. And he used a sub-commentary, which was actually very nice, but a fellow named Ramaroya Kavi. And he's referred to as Shankara Acharya, the teacher Shankara. Shankara means Shamkaroti iti Shankaraha, the one who gives that which is Sham, Mangalam, auspicious. What is the most auspicious is moksha, freedom. And that's his name. And Acharya means a teacher. We refer to him as Adi Shankaracharya, the first Shankaracharya, because he established 4 mathas, 4 learning centers around the country, and each of the heads of those were referred to as a Shankaracharya. So there are many texts that are a tribute to Adi Shankaracharya, which might very well not actually have been written by him. Sometimes this is done because people feel like, the teachers within this tradition aren't making this stuff up, right? We also, hopefully we're just teaching in line with what we've heard, right? We're just teaching what we've heard. We're not making this stuff up. And and his teacher learned from his teacher, learned from her teacher, learned from his teacher. And so I think out of humility, some author said, well, this is what my guru told me, and so I'll just say it's from Shankaracharya. Other times, the actual author was lost. They didn't think much about plagiarism back in that day. And so if the material was aligned with the intent and the teaching of the bhashas, the commentaries, then it's perfectly okay. Right. But Shankaracharya had 4 main disciples. Padmapada, or Padmapadacharya. Yeah, I don't think, I don't have it here. There's only one text that he wrote. He wrote a sub-commentary. It's a beautiful commentary tradition. You'll have the Moolam, the Upanishads or the Gita, and then you'll have the original text, and then you'll have a commentary on that, and then someone will write a commentary on that commentary, and someone else will write a commentary on that sub-commentary, the tika, and then there will be a tippani, a bunch of footnotes, and then somebody will write their own commentary in verse form, and it's just a beautiful, rich tradition. And you don't need Sanskrit to gain moksha, but the beauty of learning Sanskrit is, reading Meghaduta or reading something from Kalidasa is very beautiful. But we mumukshus want satsang, the company of the sages, of the wise people. And the wisest mind that I know, Puja Swamiji notwithstanding, I would probably put him at the top. I'm sure I'd put him at the top of the list. Is Adi Shankaracharya. So if you learn a bit of Sanskrit, you get to hang out with Adi Shankara's brilliant buddhi, and his commentary is just beautiful, exquisite. And his magnum opus is his introduction to the Brahma Sutra. We'll be reading from some of it. It's called the Adhyasa Bhasha. Just a little bit of quotes from here and there. And it just sets the stage for the entire teaching. And so Padmapada wrote a sub-commentary on Shankaracharya's Brahma Sutra Bhasha, his commentary on the Brahma Sutra. Unfortunately, most of it was lost. They say in a fire. And so the Panchapadika is that which has 5 chapters, because the only part that remains is his commentary on the first 5 sutras. And so he became the Matapati of the East, the head Shankaracharya of the East. Another main disciple of Shankaracharya is Sureshwaracharya, and he was the most prolific. He's most famous for a text called Naishkaramya Siddhi, also the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad Bhasha Vartaka in verse form, Taittiriya Upanishad Bhasha Vartaka, and others. And he became the head of the Mata in the south. The 4th is Totaka Acharya. Totaka. We only know 2 texts from him, the Shruti Sara Samudharanam and the Totakashtakam. And he became the Acharya of the north. And then we have Hasta Malakacharya. And we only have 1 text that's attributed to him. And he became and that's the text we're taking here. and he became the head of the Mata in the West. So let me tell you how he got his name. We know this from texts called Shankara Digvijaya. There's more than one, and these are the stories that you can say that hagiography. Anybody know what a hagiography is? All right, so sometimes silly words come out of this mouth. I'll try to even translate the English words. It's a story of a saint. It's used in, say, the Roman Catholic tradition, the hagiography. And so they're called Shankara Digvijayas, the stories of Shankaracharya's life. And we don't know how much is fact and how much is fiction. I believe some of it might not be, I think some of it might be a bit fictional. But the story goes that Shankaracharya was visiting a Mukambika temple in a Kadalur village in the Kundapura, Udupi district of Karnataka. Interestingly enough, do people know who Mukambika is? Said one person, Devi. The first and only Mukambika Devi temple in the United States was just inaugurated maybe 2 months ago in, of all places, Eugene, Oregon. There's a brahmacharani there, and she was doing puja to the murti for years and years, and finally it found a home, so they finally installed her properly there. So if you ever find yourself in Eugene, Oregon, stop by. It's a beautiful murti. And I tell you, Mukambika Devi has more clothes than I'm sure Melania Trump does. She has quite a wardrobe, and so you could, as I imagine, Sri Dakshinamurti does. Anyway, there was a village, and I haven't been able to find it on the map nearby, but called Sri Bali or Sri Veli. I'm not sure where it is. And an affluent Brahmana, a villager named Prabhakara, lived there, and he had a son. Some stories say he was 7 years old. Some people say he was 13 years old. I tend to believe he was maybe more 13 years old. And he seemed to not have all of his senses about him. Maybe he was on the spectrum. He didn't really speak to anybody. He wasn't really motivated to engage in the family business. You could say that, he sounded maybe like a typical moping American teenager. I don't know. Let's say he appeared maybe simple-minded. And Shankaracharya asked him some questions, and we'll see the questions. There's 2 introductory shlokas that are not part of the stotra itself. We'll see those tomorrow. But he says, basically, he addressed the boy. The father brought him to Shankaracharya thinking, hey, can you do something about this boy here? And he starts with, Kahatvam, who are you? Where did you come? What are you thinking about? Where did you come from? Please tell me. You've piqued my curiosity. I want to know more about you. This is Shankaracharya speaking to this boy. And the boy apparently responded with these 12 verses. And Shankaracharya said, this boy is a Brahmanishta because he is an aparokshik dhyanavan. He has direct, immediate knowledge of his true nature. He knows what it's all about. He's an enlightened little boy. And he actually said he's a Mahatma in a boy's body. He's not suitable for grahastashrama, to get married and follow the family business. So let him come with me and become a sannyasi. And he did. And the name that he was given is Hasta Malika. So Hasta means a hand. And so it means Hasta Stitam Amalika Palam. You know the amalika fruit? Amla? Do you know amla, gooseberry? It's a very sweet fruit, right? No, thank you. You have to be careful. Some swamis are tricksters. It's terribly sour. That's more sour than mango powder. That, of course, everybody puts in their chana, right? Anyway. And so this amalika in Sanskrit, amla fruit. It's Indian gooseberry. And it's actually, of all the fruits available, it's by far the fruit that has the highest amount of antioxidants. If you want your antioxidant income, put that in your smoothie. I tell you, it'll radically change the taste of your smoothie, but it'll be healthy. And they've done studies. I don't know how much is real, but apparently they've done studies, and it's supposed to help with blood sugar, diabetes, cholesterol, liver. It's supposed to block cancer growth. It's also said to be a hair tonic and be a neutralizer for snake venom. So you take your pick. I don't know. It has nothing to do with his name here. Oh, but you see on page 12, I wrote a sentence that describes the meaning here. Yata kaschit hastatalasta amalaka palam spashtam pashyati tata ayam balaha atmaswarupam janati. This is what it means. So yata just says kaschit, some person. So if you see, I have the Devanagari, and then I have the transliteration in proper transliteration, and then I have the translation. So follow along at whatever level you like. It's always nice to, when I'm quoting something, to read it as well, so you absorb it better. But he says, I say, yata just says kaschit, some person, spashtam pashyati, sees this hasta talasta amalaka palam, who sees this amla fruit on the palm of the hand, just as clearly as someone sees this orange, this apple. This is an iPhone. As clearly as someone sees this apple on the palm of the hand, tata ayam balaha, so too this boy, atmaswarupam janati. That's as clearly as this boy sees the atmaswarupa, the very nature of himself. There's a lot there, because in reality, nothing hides the truth of Atma. And we'll be talking about this. Well, there's some quotes from chapter 18, verse 50 of the Bhagavad Gita that I was so inspired by. I reviewed it in 3 different Sanskrit classes and 3 different Vedanta classes because it's so beautiful. And where Shankaracharya says, there's nothing more easily recognizable than Atma. There's nothing closer than Atma. Atma means the self. There is no small self and big self. There's only just the self. The only thing that's here is the limitless Atma plus confused notions about that Atma. Nothing hides Atma except for ignorance and the subsequent adhyasa, the subsequent superimpositions that we place upon this Atma. This may sound a bit provocative, but moksha is here for the taking. You are here. Oftentimes, I can't help but ask this. Many of you have heard me say this. Some of you haven't. It's always nice to speak to a new audience because not all of you have heard these silly California Swami jokes. Because I usually do a very important filtering with students who come. Because if you cannot say yes to these 2 qualifying questions, I am going to have to ask you to leave because you are fundamentally not qualified for this teaching. Are you here? If you're not here, raise your hand. Okay, you're all here. What do I mean? Swamiji, you're so silly. You are present. You are a present, existent being. You are Swata Siddha Atma. The nature of the self is pure existence. This is where we use the word Sat, or Satyam, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, or Satchidananda. The fact that you are present, your presence means that you exist right now. when this class is not, again, to talk about some Atma out there. I was teaching a few years ago here, and somebody came and sat down and had lunch with me. And he kept saying, I want to know the Atma. I want to know the Atma. And at least in my mind, I didn't actually take his hand, but I took my own hand and said, there is no Atma, there's only Atma. All right? So apparently you all pass. Now there's other things one can do to prepare oneself to gain adhikaritvam, to gain jnana nishta yogyata, to create the wherewithal to gain this vision with utter clarity and hold it so it becomes your living reality. That is not out of the question for any of you. Sometimes we need to tune our jivatvam up. Right? There are practices to quieten the mind and open the heart and be able to engage in the world with a certain degree of objectivity. We'll talk about that. There are things that you can do to transform the transformable. Atma, the truth of who you are right now, is not transformable. It's the only thing that's not transformable. The domain of action is to transform that which is subject to transformation. I see some of you are saying, Swamiji, what are you talking about? You are not, when I say you, I mean Atma, who's sitting here, who raised your hand. Are you here? Yes. Right? Atma is not subject to transformation. You cannot gain the Atma. You cannot reach the Atma. You can only discover Atma. And even that is a misnomer, because to discover something, it first has to be covered. And Atma is not covered. Mithya does not cover Satyam, if you know that terminology. We're not encased in the Panchakoshas, right? Nothing hides us other than our ignorance. I was talking to Gurubai the other day, who came to visit. And he was talking about his first meeting with Puja Swamiji. And the first meeting, the first class that he came to, a public talk, he just stumbled upon, as many of us do, this poster of this unknown Swami. And Puja Swamiji taught, I think, the nature of Jiva, Jagat, and Ishvara, the nature of the Jiva, the individual, the world, the Jagat, and Ishvara, the Lord. Right? If anybody wants to, in an elevator pitch, what is Vedanta? What are you studying? We're investigating the nature of the individual, the world, and the cause of the world, if there's a God, and what's the reality of them, and what's the relationship among them. It took me years to be able to just say, oh, that's what Vedanta is about. And he said, he approached Puja Swamiji after that first talk, and he said, how can there be just one thing? I see so many things here. I see multiplicity galore. And Puja Swamiji looked at him and just said, ignorance. And he almost stormed out in a huff, because the Swami had just called him an ignoramus. So don't take, I'm not calling you an ignoramus, but the only thing that prevents you from the truth of yourself, from everything you seek, right? Some of you may have heard the phrase, you are even now what you seek to become. And what you seek to become, what you're really seeking, is to be free of seeking. And all seeking resolves in the self. And the irony is that the very process of seeking denies the presence of the sought, right? Because we're all looking out there. This is where the light is. The senses are looking outside. It's like the fellow who lost his keys in the house, but he's under the street light, because that's where the light is, right? Instead of looking inside, he's looking out where the senses. Oh, you're the source of my joy. You're the source of my sorrow. You're the source of my security, artha, kama, dharma, etc. We'll talk all about that. So I'm not saying that you're all ignoramuses, or is it ignorami? I don't know. But you are an existent person right here. Okay, the second qualifying, if you say, one needs to be able to say yes to this, or else I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Are you awake? If you're not awake, nudge your neighbor. Tell him, ask him to elbow you so you wake up. Silly. No. What do I mean by awake? You are awareful. You express awarefulness. You are a swaprakasha Atma Chaitanya. You are a present, existent, awareful being. And that's the maxim. That's the very absolute qualification everybody must have in order to understand this teaching. And no one doesn't have that. So you were actually in no danger there. Everything else is gravy in a sense of qualifications. A depth of meditation or an abundance of sattva guna, or a chitta naishchalya, an equanimity of mind, or an open heart. All of that is maybe helpful, maybe even be necessary, but insufficient. And you all meet you all have sufficient qualifications for this. And so this is not just silly, it's utterly profound. Because as clearly as you can see this phone, that's as clearly as one can see the self. Now, the difference, there's always limitations in a drishtanta. We'll be seeing a lot of drishtantas. Drishtantas means illustrations. There's two things. There's a drishtanta and a darshtanta. The drishtanta is an illustration, an example or illustration. And the darshtanta is the thing that it's illustrating, right? If the drishtanta was exactly the same as the darshtanta, it would be the darshtanta. So there are always limitations in an example. And some people try to argue outside the scope of the example. Well, Swamiji, the example is this, but what about this? Well, you're going outside the scope of what the example or illustration is trying to teach. And so the fault or the problem with that example, this is a drishtanta, this phone, as clearly as I see the phone. The thing is that I can put the phone in front of my eyes. The phone is available for pratyaksha pramana. It's available for sensory perception. Atma awareness is not available for sensory perception. It's the one who abides behind the eyes, the eye of the eyes, so to speak. Awareness is non-objectifiable. Everything that is not I is objectifiable. So unlike the phone, I am not an object. Atma is not an object to be cognized by any of the senses or by any other means of knowledge. It's a very nuanced teaching tradition here. They say that, and we'll talk about this tomorrow when we talk about the Shrotriya, a sampradayavit. Shankara says a sampradayavit means someone who knows the traditional teaching methodology. Because sampradayam veti iti sampradayavit, the one who knows the traditional methodology. Because you cannot bring awareness out in front of you and say, oh, there's awareness. You cannot bring existence out in front of you and say, oh, there's existence, although there's no place that you can look where existence is not. So the truth of yourself is unobjectifiable. And so it's a very nuanced teaching. And if we have time, I'm probably going to say something that might be controversial. But it allowed all the teaching sort of to find its place in me, in my mind. And it's the metta prakriya. Prakriya means a teaching methodology. And there's a certain overarching teaching methodology which a teacher uses to bring a student to this understanding. And the terminology that Puja Swamiji would use is the teacher, the guru, wields the teaching, the shastra, the shruti, the scripture as a pramana, because it's an art form, right? It's an art form. It's a skill. And when a teacher teaches, all things being equal, and they know their stuff, they know their traditional teaching methodology, and their vision aligns with the vision of his or her guru, And his or her guru aligns with the vision of the rishis, the Arsha Vidya, the Arsha Drishti, the vision of the sages of ancient India. When the person in front of you can communicate and has that vision, that teacher, just through language, through Shabda Pramana, language as a means of knowledge, which we'll talk about, can in real time mold to create the vritti in the mind of the student so that the buddhi, the knowledge, is transferred like one flame to another, right? And so for a teacher, classes are like an open-eyed nididhyasana, an open-eyed contemplation, right? And this is how it should be. It's best to listen. One must have shraddha for this to take hold. Shraddha is often called it translated as faith. It's not, I only need to have faith. Let me say it this way. Something is available for belief or faith only if it's away from me in time or space. The Shruti, the text, the Upanishad, I mean the Vedas, the scriptures of ancient India that's still very much alive today, is considered a pramana, Shabda pramana, a means of knowledge in the form of words. And they give knowledge about things that are immediately available to be verified and things that cannot be currently verified. So they talk about Swargaloka. I've never met anybody who's been. I've never met anybody who's eager to go, right? But they say there's Swargaloka, the whole model of transmigration and punya and papa and causality of drishta and adrishta phala, the subtle results of action and if you follow dharma, if you do acts of compassion and generosity, you sort of work your way into in a position where you can take a temporary vacation in some level of Swargaloka, heaven. I don't know. That's what the Shruti says. How do I know? It's a much more, it all hangs together much better than other models of the afterlife that I hear about, that I've learned about. But it's a belief. You can choose to believe in it or not. I could believe that there's people, there's some aliens living in, on a moon of Pluto. Does Pluto have moons? No. All right. You see, I wasn't an excellent student in my astronomy class. But you could say living on some planet, some moon of some planet in the solar system. It's probably unverifiable. You can believe in that. Back in the day, you could believe that the moon was made of green cheese. Who could say? Are you? And so this Shraddha can be considered aparokshik jnanam in some, parokshik jnanam, indirect knowledge. This is how we know most of how we learn in a classroom. I've never seen a molecule or an atom or a proton. An apta purusha, a reliable source stood up in the front of the classroom and said, hey, this is what an electron is, this is what a proton is. I doubt they have seen it either, right? But through language, you can gain knowledge of something which is beyond the scope of your immediate sensory perception. You are here, apparently, because you all raised your hand when I asked if you were here. Indirect knowledge, I said, is only necessary when the object of knowledge is away from you in time or space. Theoretical knowledge, faith. I have faith that there's a Swargaloka. Heaven is not particularly interesting, to be honest. We care much less about the afterlife. We want Jivan Mukti right here. The goal of this teaching is to gain freedom right here, freedom from suffering, freedom from non-self-acceptance, freedom from anger. We want to discover the source of contentment and happiness and love and joy, right, and security. And so that's what moksha is. is a discovery of this right here and right now. It's called moksha. It's called jivan mukti, jivan eva muktihi, liberation even while alive. So there may be a heaven. If there is a heaven and I end up there, I'm sure it'll take care of itself. Or if I end up elsewhere, well, I'll get nice and toasty. Right. So Shraddha is translated as, Puja Swami would say, a belief pending verification. Because you can believe in yourself, right? When I say, oh, you have to believe in yourself, believe in yourself means, oh, I believe in my Icha, Jnana, and Kriya Shakti. I believe I have the knowledge and the skill and the imagination to accomplish things that I want to accomplish in this world. Right? That's believe in your capacity. You don't need to believe in Atma. I was once in Rishikesh. I was once visiting, and they were having a retreat. And some of you have heard me say this more than once. And I was giving satsang to the students there, and I had the audacity to say, "Don't believe a word your guru tells you." I'm not sure he appreciated that, but what I meant was, understand, this teaching welcomes questioning. There's a whole Upanishad called Prajna Upanishad, an Upanishad just of questioning. Arjuna peppers Sri Krishna with questions. Mananam is an integral part of the sadhana, of the spiritual practice, which is questioning to gain clarity of knowledge. We want clarity of knowledge. We don't want to believe in something. We want to understand it. Right? And if you just walk away and say, oh, I believe it, you're doing the entire tradition and your guru a disservice. Because they don't want you to believe, they want you to understand, or else so many words would not be be coming out of all these talented and wise people at this Gurukulam. So you can think of Shraddha as I translate it, Puja Swami would say it's a faith pending understanding. I translate it as a trusting inquisitiveness, right? It's putting both belief and disbelief aside. See, many of us are very wedded to the spiritual notions we come to this teaching with. And because we're all such earnest seekers, we found profundity in this tradition and profundity in this tradition, and we had an aha moment here, and I had some exquisite cosmic revelation in this tradition and some mystical experience in this tradition. We tend to be very eclectic and synchronistic, right? We take a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. No, this must map with this, and this must map with this, and this maps with this. And we have this screen of preconceived notions through which we filter what's being said. And oftentimes the import of what is being taught does not hit its target, because we're trying to compare it in real time with what we knew before and fit it into our own spiritual framework. So it's like, I feel like there's a scaffolding with all of our spiritual trinkets of understanding in front of us. Put it all aside. You cannot, if you're mentally sitting like this, it ain't gonna work, right? But it doesn't mean just believe. It means listen with an open heart and an open mind, and follow the vichara, the inquiry as it goes along, and see if something makes sense. And then later, there's time for questions. Mananam is a very important part of this, bringing the intellect to bear on the teaching. Actually, all the bhashyas of Shankaracharya, the commentaries, are replete with what is called Purva Paksha Siddhanta. Puja Swamiji would, this is actually our style too, but it's inherent in the commentaries, traditional commentaries. He raises objections, he raises questions. The questions and objections can be raised by other traditional schools of thought, either Astika or Nastika, either those that are in the Vedic tradition or those that are outside of the Vedic tradition, or just questions that people might have. And so it's very dialogical. There's a dialogue going on, because Shankaracharya would raise these questions, because maybe there were student notes of classes during satsang, or maybe he just, maybe he sat and wrote it and said, oh, somebody may have this objection. But questioning is understood for the sake of understanding. So Shraddha is important, because it's a jignasa, it's a curiosity, it's an inquisitiveness, but it's an open-minded inquisitiveness pending understanding, and that's what would lead to this hasta malaka vatjnanam, this knowledge which is as clear as this apple on the palm of the hand. And so Shankaracharya and Mataji, this boy's mother, were quite astonished when this boy came out with these 12 verses, and so Shankaracharya gave him that name, Hastam Malaka. And apparently there's another meaning too, which was Swami Paramarthanandaji was informed of while he was teaching this. And I know no Tamil. Any Tamil speakers here? No Tamil speakers here? Oh, the people on YouTube are going to just be screaming at me. I saw it written down. I don't know. Ulankai Nelikani? I apologize. I bristle when I hear people in California saying the Hatha Yoga and then reading the Ramayana and the I can't even say it wrong, Mahabharata. It's like, oh no. So I'm sure people are are cringing. Sorry, if you're listening to this elsewhere. But there's a fruit apparently, and when it's unripe, it's opaque. Right? You cannot see through it. And then when it becomes ripe, it becomes transparent. And so another example that Swami Paramarthananda was schooled about when he was teaching this was apparently when it becomes ripe, it becomes not only translucent but transparent. And so you can see into the very center of the fruit. So you can see the pratyak seed, pratyak bijam, right? The inner seeds, the very center of the fruit. And so this Hasta Malaka boy was one who could see into the very center of the jiva, into the pratyakatma, as clearly as he saw the fruit. And we'll talk about this tomorrow. This is a contemplative text because everything is expressed in the first person. It's not saying the Atma is this, the Atma is this. This is Hasta Malaka introducing himself to Shankaracharya saying, this is me. Oh, by the way, I happen to be Paramatma. Very beautiful text. So we'll have meditation tomorrow, and then we'll have our first class at 9:30, right? Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Let me ask, who here, for whom is this the first real exposure to Advaita Vedanta? To whom this is brand new, yeah. Who has attended other retreats or listened to other swamis within this tradition? A number of people, okay. Okay, good. I'll try to keep it multi-leveled. So some of you may hear something and say, huh? And that's okay if I don't describe it. That's for the people who know what aeun ruluk aeung might mean. All right. Om Tat Sat.